Today, I'm going to talk a shit ton about the idea of making a business, about the idea of how to create a business, whether it's a creative business or some form of service-based industry, which is what I'm in. Service-based industry is not the correct way to put it. I'm in a service-based. I created a service-based business is what I was trying to say. But overall, I want to talk about the concept of making businesses. Should you make a business? What goes into making businesses and how you can make a business that will actually work. And I'm speaking on this from the experience of a 23-year-old that has a relatively successful company. I classify the word successful as I have done multiple things and I have not failed at a drastic measure yet. I'm sure I will hit some failure at some point, but I will always bounce back. And to me, that's success. So I guess I've entitled myself to speak about it. Lately, there is such a huge importance on the idea of starting a business. Maybe importance isn't the right word, but discussion perhaps. Like so many people are talking about making businesses, about why you should have a business, the one-man business model or one-lady business model. And it's, for me personally, it is all over my feed. Now, I'm aware that I might not be interested in the same thing everyone else is interested, so it's targeted towards me more. But if you're watching this episode, you're probably interested in it too. So let's have a discussion about it. I think like 20 years ago, and I might be wrong, I was only 3 at the time, but it felt like culturally it was more acceptable to go and get a job, to work for someone and to do what the person at the top of you is telling you to do. Whereas fast forward to now, I feel like people are becoming drastically more independent. Everybody wants to be the most independent person possible, and people are starting to realize that working a 9 to 5 mightn't be the best way to have a fulfilling life. And I think a lot of the reasoning behind starting a business comes from a place of fulfillment and a seeking for success. For me, it did. I wanted to start a business because I realized that the fastest way to get to a position where I'm happy with my own life was to do it by myself. They say if you want to go fast, go by yourself. If you want to go forever, go with a team. So I decided that I was going to come out the gates like Usain, and I ran like a MF. And then I eventually hired a team. So if we start all the way back with should you or should you not start a business, if you're somebody that is interested in having freedom of your time, if you're somebody that has a good work ethic, if you're somebody that has a relatively good level of discipline, and if you're somebody that just doesn't want to do what people tell you to do, a business or some form of entrepreneurship venture is probably for you. If you're somebody that really enjoys comfort, if you're somebody that enjoys getting a steady paycheck, if you're somebody that doesn't enjoy stress, starting a business is most likely not for you. Now, if you don't want to start a business, I would suggest that you don't watch the rest of this video because you probably won't find anything at all beneficial in it, because I'm really going to just talk on the concept of actually making a business because that's what's relevant to moi. The only way to make a business is to create something. To talk about the word create, it's something that I often thought had to be a piece of art or a song, a video, a photograph, a painting, something that you create with some set of skills. That is actually what it is. Creating something is just making an idea real with a bespoke set of skills. So I gave away the crunger. Trying to create something and trying to be artistic, I think, are two different things. And I think they sometimes get blurred together because they make sense in unison with each other. You know, to be an artist and to be a creator, they're kind of similar. However, art to me is a lot more subjective. It is truly the rawest form of creativity. It's making something that other people mightn't necessarily relate to, but for you, it felt right. On the flip side, I think a creator can be somebody who puts bricks together. Somebody who builds a house created that house. Somebody that put together this table created the table. I put together this table, so I actually created the table. But I'm definitely not a carpenter. So I suppose, again, the only way to make a business is to create something. This doesn't mean that you have to be an overly creative person. You just have to identify a problem and create a solution for said problem. That is the foundation of every single business in the world. They saw a problem and they created a solution for the problem. Of course, we look at big companies like Google or, any of the BlackRock companies. All of these companies are not so much creating stuff anymore. they're pioneering and they're attempting to continue growing in their niche, but their niche is now an industry. But at one stage, they created something like Twitter. At the early stages of Twitter, no one had made a Twitter before. At the early stages of Amazon, no one had made an Amazon before. So what I'm getting at is these people might not be the most creative people in the world, but they've created entities and things that will outlive them forever. They created something much bigger than themselves, which essentially is what a business is. You create a solution to a problem. Creativity, for me, well, it hasn't always been this way for me. And I think that's important, and I want to touch on that, is when I first got into making anything, which was for me video and photographs, I thought creativity had to be thinking of the craziest thing possible that no one else has ever done. And that definitely is a form of creativity, but that form of creativity is extremely exhausting. And if you're trying to create a business model based on that style of creativity, I don't think it will ever... It will, but it will be very difficult to maintain for a long time. I was going to say I don't think it will ever work, but I do think it would work. I just think it's quite difficult, and I think it's probably unnecessary. I think a lot of the times creating something just has to be a simple, again, solution for a problem. So for me, I had to really reframe how I look at creativity, because I felt like I was creatively starved, because I've put so much time into making the business and into growing the business that I haven't been putting as much time for myself to create things, whether it be videos, podcasts, photos, whatever it is that I used to create. I had to realize that I am actively creating on a day-to-day basis. I'm creating solutions to problems every day. I'm creating videos every day. Like on a day-to-day basis, we probably put out 10, 20 videos across social media platforms for all of our clients. Like there's a lot of videos and a lot of content being created. So it's not like I'm not creating anymore, but I just had to reframe that for myself, because I felt like I was selling my soul, because I was putting all of my energy into making a business, and the idea of a business is to make money so that you can make the business bigger. And I felt for myself that I was trading my creativity for the devil. But in hindsight, when I think about it from that perspective, and maybe that's just because I want to believe that, and I'm completely completely open to that, I should say. I might not be right here, but for me, it feels right. It feels like what I'm doing is some form of creation. It mightn't be the most artistry way of creating, but it's creating something nonetheless. The thing about being creative now is the most accessible it has ever been. There is literally no idea that you could have that you can't create. There's so many 3D generators online. There's image generators online. There's video generators starting to appear. I can't remember I think it's Sora AI. It's part of OpenAI, and it is absolutely mind-blowing and slightly terrifying for anybody in the video industry. Like personally, when I see the caliber of video that software is creating, I would be naive to say that I can create videos as well as that. I can definitely do a really good fucking job, but to create them as picture perfectly as Sora can do is very difficult. Like in the show reel that they presented to people, there was a video of a dude walking around in some iceberg somewhere. Like to even think about filming that for me is difficult. They just typed that in a very well engineered prompt, and it gave them this video result. It's not yet accessible to the public, and I think they haven't done that because they're aware of how dangerous it could be, because if we can make beautiful cinematic videos, we can probably make some terrifying stuff too. So I would imagine until they have some form of regulation in place, it won't be available to the public. So videographers, you've bought yourselves probably another couple of months. What I'm saying is there's so many tools and there's so many avenues for creativity now. Again, even looking at ChatGPT, like if we talk about creativity in the sense of creating a solution to a problem, you could give 17, 20, 30 problems to ChatGPT and it will probably engineer you a solid solution for each one of those problems. There's so many other forms of AI. There's an AI I use called Perplexity, which is absolutely fantastic. It basically is like a Wikipedia at your fingertips, so it will generate you more precise search results based on a prompt. It's more like Google. It's more like Google with ChatGPT built in. So you can say, what is this or XYZ, and it will give you a tailored response, and it will pull from multiple news articles or multiple articles on the topic, and it will give you a condensed answer. I'm aware that ChatGPT does that, but for some reason, Perplexity for me feels a lot nicer to use. So There you go. If you haven't used Perplexity, shout out to them. There's so many of these softwares, there's so many cameras, there's so many tablets, different like apps that we can use now to make an idea become real, that there's zero excuse for not making anything. I think that's what I'm trying to get at here in a long-winded way, in a true Dylan fashion. There's zero excuse to not create anything. However, on the flip side, it's so overwhelming because there's so many options. It's like oversaturation. You give somebody a task and you give them 100 different ways to do the task versus you give one person a task and you give them one way to do it. The person who only has one way to do the task is probably going to do it quicker than the person with 100. So I think that's something important to consider if you do find yourself overwhelmed with trying to make something in our current stages, because it is hard. It is hard to sit down and think, how am I going to do this? And then you've got ChatGPT, which will write the script for you. You've got OpenAI that's able to actually create these videos, or not OpenAI, but Midjourney or DALL-E. And then you've got Sora that can actually create videos. And then you've got other applications like Framer, which can create an entire website, which is code free. So there's so many ways to do things now. I think the important thing is to narrow down your scope. Think of what is the quickest way and what is the easiest way for me to do it. And that's the way I'm going to do it. Don't worry about how great everything else is, because the reality is the best way is the way you're doing it. That's a lie. The best way isn't necessarily the way you're doing it. The best way is the way you choose to do it. That's a better way of putting that. Aside with the volume of tools, there's also a huge volume of inspiration. There are so many people making stuff now. It's so overwhelming. The creator economy is a term that's thrown around like crazy because it's booming, because everybody has access to a phone. Everybody's able to make something. And like 90% of the people that are cultivating the majority of the views on these platforms are probably creating on their phones. So it's not like these guys are investing millions and millions into camera equipment, or maybe I should say thousands and thousands into camera equipment and creating these beautiful cinematics. Like there was a movie recently that was shot entirely on the camera you're watching this podcast on. It was called The Creator. It was a sci-fi movie, and they shot the entire thing on FX3s, which again is insane. Like that's the caliber of equipment that we have at our fingertips. This was like a box office, or I don't know what's a box office, but it was on Amazon Prime. It was a streaming movie, but I haven't actually watched it, but I've heard that it was meant to be pretty freaking amazing. You're going to have to excuse me for one moment while I put my phone on Do Not Disturb, because it's vibrating and it keeps throwing me off. The amount of inspiration that's available to us right now, again, similar to the tools, is overwhelming. Like you could go to Instagram or you could go to TikTok thinking, I'm going to just look for some inspiration, but don't fall for the trap. That doesn't happen. These algorithms are designed to keep you there. If you think you're going to go onto that platform and watch one single video, search one single user, you are mistaken, unless you have a bulletproof mind. I like to think that I'm pretty disciplined. I don't spend a lot of time on social media. In fact, on social medias outside of YouTube, I actually spend pretty much zero time outside of YouTube and Twitter. Instagram and TikTok, I go on maybe once every 2 days, which is pretty ironic because my whole business model is oriented around the effectiveness of these platforms, but they're so effective that they even trap me. And I'm the guy that's orchestrating the strings at the top, so I don't want to get on them, pretty much, is what I'm saying. There's inspiration to be found on all of these platforms. There's inspiration to be found on YouTube, Twitter, so I can't even think of them. There's millions of them. You guys know, you probably use social media if you're watching this video. On each one of these platforms, there's so many creators that are probably creating stuff you think is fantastic and you would like to emulate. And this is where we get to the idea of creating sticks and replication will always die. If I was to try and copy what Casey Neistat did now, I'd put my money against myself that it would work out and that it would become a new style, because it's copied, it's been done before. So if we're seeing somebody do something and we think, oh, I'd love to do that, and you look at how they did it and you replicate that to your own form, it's never going to work. There's inspiration to be taken from these people, but replication is very easy when you're looking at a volume of inspiration. So I've slightly segued a little bit, so I'm going to pull it back to talk about overconsumption, because as I just touched on, like, we have a problem, I think, with overconsumption in terms of tools and methods to do things. We also have an overconsumption when it comes to actually viewing things, inspiration and comparing ourselves or our creation against somebody else's. So, what's the easiest way to avoid this, Dylan, you ask? I don't fucking know, I respond. But I'm trying to figure it out, and I've made an attempt at how I go about figuring it out and how I stop myself from becoming too overwhelmed. Because like a year ago or a year and a half ago, the amount of time that I spent on socials, I'd just be scrolling because I was posting more then too. So I felt like I needed to be on the app and, be in the culture. The amount of time that I was spending on them was probably not helping me. And it didn't help me because I didn't come up with any crazy ideas. They were ideas that I had and I executed on them. But overconsumption is a real fucking issue, man. So don't fall into the trap. If you find yourself spending more than 30, 40 minutes on TikTok or on Instagram a day, you're probably a victim of overconsumption, because why do you need to watch other people's videos for that long? And you might say for some fun. It's not fun. You're killing your brain. Stop doing it. That's my opinion on it. I hate social media. As much as I love it, I really do despise it. I despise it because it's so well engineered to keep our attention. And I believe that if you give all your attention to something like this, you're just going to pay the price in your own life. Like, again, I love content. I am making content. I consume content every day. But the way that these social media platforms are engineered, they are designed to keep you on them. No one's going to make a social media app that's super minimalist and super carefree with no ads or no algorithm. Why would they? Because it won't work. You're competing against these people. Like, TikTok is a beast. TikTok, in its terms and service, I believe this is true. I'm definitely paraphrasing, but I believe while you're using the app, they have access to micro expressions. So say, for example, I'm watching a video, I'm looking along and I see it and I go like, They can see my reaction. If you're listening to this, I made a slight smile and a gesture of happiness. They can see that and they will subconsciously push more of the content you just smiled at because they said this is a good video. They like that. Now, I don't know if that's 100% true, so that whole section might be fabricated, but I did hear it on a podcast. Someone was talking about the depths of the terms and services on YouTube or on TikTok, and they said that was one of the sneaky ones. I also believe they have some weird access to keystrokes, which is, again, freaky because if you have passwords or anything on your phone, they can see you typing them in. I don't know if that's inside and outside the app, but if they have access to keystrokes, it's definitely in the app. So anything you do and say on that app is pretty much videoed. So maybe you won't use TikTok as much after watching this one. Another problem with the overconsumption is the speed of content and the speed of information we're receiving nowadays is fucking crazy. Like, years ago, you would have watched a 40-minute, 50-minute documentary and been like, Jesus, that was short. Now we're watching 15-second videos and we're watching hundreds of them a day. And you probably can't remember. It's the classic phrase. It's like, you can't remember the last 5 videos you scrolled past. Yeah, well, obviously, bro, because you scrolled past them. So they weren't worth you watching. You probably remember a couple of the funny ones you stuck at. But it's like a slot machine or it is a slot machine, isn't it? When the things fly down. I've never gambled, so I don't know. But I think that's how they work. The things just slide down the screen. It's like dopamine, dopamine, dopamine. So be careful. Overconsumption is pretty nasty. So again, coming back to creating businesses, overconsuming and looking at all of these inspirations and people that have done it before sometimes is not the best thing to do. Sometimes you need to consume the content passively and sit with it. So let's touch into the creativity sticks part. Creating something that people haven't made before or creating a version of something that people haven't made before is always going to stick. If it's a photograph that someone hasn't taken from the exact angle, like let's say Moraine Lake, because I remember I still love him from how I experienced him before, but I don't really watch his content as much. Peter McKinnon, he used to photograph Moraine Lake and he had amazing photographs of the lake, like beautiful place that I want to go to see because of his photographs. But if everyone goes and creates the same photograph as Peter McKinnon, it's never going to be as good as Peter McKinnon because Peter McKinnon took the photo. You hear what I'm saying? It's the originator. It's the IP that's associated with that photo. If Peter McKinnon was a nobody and somebody else took that photo who had 1 million followers or 1 million subscribers on YouTube, Peter McKinnon's photo wouldn't be worth anything against that person because they have the leverage. So you need to realize, well, Peter McKinnon took it from this angle, so why don't I go 60 steps to the left and take it portrait and take it at a different season? Now you've created a version of what somebody else created, and that's open for other people to connect with. The leverage aspect that I just touched on is Peter McKinnon has more eyes. He's got more awareness. People trust him because he makes photos and he's created these things in the past. So they're going to trust him and they're going to value his work more because a million people say he's good at what he does. Versus someone that has 10 people that tell them he's good at what he does. Yeah, he's still good, but he's not as good as a million people telling you. So that person's always going to perform better in terms of, leverage. They have the leverage going into the photograph. So if you and him took the exact same photograph, the guy with the leverage is always going to get more eyes and they're going to get more awareness and you're always going to fall short. So you need to think of something different. Stand out. Figure out a way that you can carve your own path. And again, taking inspiration is not a bad thing. I'm not bashing that. It's when you replicate it, you're just shooting yourself in the foot because eventually when that person stops making things, you're not going to have anything to make. So you need to realize that if I want to create something, I need to look at what everyone's doing. I need to be aware of what everyone's doing. And I need to think, how can I package this differently and how can I make it my own? That is the easiest way to create. The hardest way to create is to sit in a room, turn off all the lights, in complete silence and brainstorm. That's a harder way to create, but the ideas you find in there might be completely original because they're not coming from any source of inspiration. I'm going to touch on the word source in a minute and reference some Rick Rubin, but first things first, shout out to our sponsor. Fractured Vibe is a content creation company in Dublin or Ireland, and we specialize in creating social media styled content. This is the content you see when you scroll through your phone, UGC, user-generated content. We do it for you. We come to your business, we ideate the content, we create the content on the day, and then we edit the content internally, and we can even distribute the content for you. So you don't have to waste any more time thinking of how can I make my product look fantastic on Instagram, because we do it for you. Whether it's a product, a service, your business as a whole, or maybe it's a personal brand you're trying to get off the ground, or maybe it's even a podcast. Good thing for you, we do it all. And now I'm going to send you back to the other guy. The other guy is me. This is not a paid advertisement. Source in Rick Rubin's book, The Creative Act. I haven't read all of it yet, so I might be explaining it wrong, but you should go read the book. It's an absolutely fantastic book, and I think it's one of the best books I've ever read in terms of getting my mind thinking and feeling heard as well. A lot of the stuff that I've talked about in this episode was arguably inspired by reading that book, so you should go read the book. He talks about source as being this thing that we consume every single day. So this room for me is source, and it all comes into our peripheral and into our vision, and we have a filter behind this vision that takes out what we need. Like, all I can really see right now is the lens that I'm looking down. There's a huge light here beside me. I can see the flip screen from my camera. I've got my Subway from earlier today there, my bottle, but I'm not actually taking all that stuff in. It's in my peripheral, and my filter is deciding it's not important. So talking about how creativity sticks, when we're outside and you go for a walk in nature and you look around, not to sound like a wishy-washy dude, but I love nature. I think it's so important, and I don't think people understand how important it is. I don't even understand how important it is, but I know that when I'm in specific places outside in nature, I feel a type of way that I don't feel when I'm inside four walls with no natural light hitting my eyes. So on that, your filter determines what is worthwhile keeping. We are supercomputers, but we have like a megabyte of RAM. We cannot actively memorize everything as we're receiving it. Things come in and things go out, and as Tim Ferriss says, the good shit sticks. So, creativity. Being outside, looking at all this stuff, consuming all of this stuff, it's going to allow you to generate thoughts, generate ideas based on your experience. And that's the beauty of creativity. It ties heavily into your experience. So again, to talk about replicating Casey Neistat, I might have watched a Casey Neistat video and it might have made me feel some type of way. Not to be sus, but it might have made me feel inspired, or it might have made me feel angry, and that anger or that inspiration might transform into an idea of some form. But the only way that we can transform these ideas is if we sit with them. So to further discuss how creativity sticks is, as I said, the hardest way of creating is to go into a room, turn off the lights, get a pen and paper and write. Now, you don't have to turn off the lights, and you also don't have to go into a room, choose a coffee shop somewhere, do it wherever you wish. You don't have to do it with pen and paper, but I highly suggest doing it with pen and paper. I really do think it makes you much more aware of what you're writing, and it also eliminates the distraction of notifications if you're typing on your phone or your laptop. Go into a room and just write. Just start writing, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be Dear Diary, but it could be like, oh, today this happened, that happened. And very soon you will start to write and be conscious of the things that are most poignant in your mind. And when I say most poignant, these are the things that you constantly come back to, whether it's like, shit, I have to pay my taxes, or shit, I should have texted that person back, or shit, I didn't do the thing that I was supposed to do. And by writing these things through, they'll become more aware to you of what you need to focus on. And this is, again, where creating is not always an art piece. It might be just creating a solution to a problem. Writing for me is the easiest way to tap into some form of creativity. Like I write every day, at least man, I don't know why, but since I came back from my little ad break, my flow has been interrupted. And I know why, actually. It's because I had to change the battery on my camera and I got out of the pocket, but I'm going to sit back in the pocket now. I'm going to talk about what I was talking about. But when I interrupted myself, I forgot about what I was talking about. And this is a live example of how we don't have any RAM. We cannot retain memory, and my memory feels absolutely trashed at the moment. Writing for me is so important. I write for a minimum of 30 minutes to an hour a day. Minimum 30 minutes, ideal an hour. And that sounds like waste of time. I used to think that too, but since doing it, it has helped my mental state immensely. I'm a very anxious person. Like I overthink things to the nth degree. I waste so much of my time worrying about things that are completely outside of my control, and I'm trying to be better at not doing that all the time. For me, writing is a fantastic way to minimize some of those anxieties because I get them on paper, they feel a little bit more real, and then I can create solutions to the problems. Now, to further this and talk back to business, if you're trying to start a business, you've consumed all of this content on YouTube, you've consumed all of this content on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, wherever you got it from, you've read blogs, you've read books. You need to sit now because no more content is going to help you start a business or create a product or solve an issue. You can't consume anything else that's going to make you do it except maybe Adderall. And I don't even know if you can get that in Ireland. So you're back to your pen and paper, buddy. Sit down and just write. Consider, I want to come out of this session. Let's not call it a session. That sounds very intense. I want to come away from writing today and I want to have thought of at least 3 ideas. Now, giving yourself that expectation from personal experience can be quite overwhelming and you're like, fuck, what if I don't think of 3 ideas? And hey, buddy, that's fine. It doesn't actually matter if you don't think 3 ideas. The idea is the effort to do it. As we talked about in our last episode, we talked about less is more. Doing small things over a large scale of time is much more effective than doing one thing every once in a while. So sit down and write. Write about the ideas the minute it comes to your brain as well. Sorry, segue again. I'm being a bit of a loser here. The minute an idea comes to your brain, write it down. Our brains are for making ideas and coming up with ideas, but they're not for storing them. So do not rely on your memory to recall an idea because you will either recall it in a fragmented form or you won't have the same excitement about it. And if you were excited about it in the first place, it's something worthwhile being excited about. Write your shit down. I've got my pen here. This pen has lasted me about 2 months. It's been with me now. So that thing has written down a lot of ideas. Write down your ideas, and as you begin to write them, the ones that are the most effective and the ones that mean the most to you will jump out at you. I can't explain it. I don't know what it is. Maybe I need to do more research on it, but for me, it feels like I get like a lurch in my stomach or my heart almost flutters a little bit, like you're falling in love, you know? That first time you see the girl, you're like, whoo! You get that little, oh. I still get it sometimes with Safik, so shout out to Safik, but when you're writing, you'll get that little flutter. You'll get that little feeling of like, oh, there's something in that. And that's the sign. That's all you need. You find that idea, and now it's time to do the work. We talked about this a lot in the last episode, so I'm not going to go too heavy into it, but I'll talk about the concept of reverse engineering the problem or reverse engineering the solution. Find the idea, whatever idea it might be, and think, okay, well, if this idea is X, how do I get to X if I'm at Y? And the easiest way to do that is, let's take a social media business, for example. Say you want to go and do, or maybe let's do an ad business, for example, because they're kind of easier to explain. You see a company, you want to put their company in front of more people's more people's eyes. So you decide, well, the first thing for me to do is if I want to put this company in front of more people's eyes. Sorry, I can't say that sentence. The first thing you have to do is figure out how can you contact that company, because it's great if you want to do it, but if you don't have any form of communicating with this company, then you're never going to get to do it. Now, you might think you want to do Nike's ads. The reality is you're probably not going to get to do them off the first bat. So you're going to have to start smaller. Look at companies that are in a similar niche to Nike, to name a few around here. There's like Under Armour, Adidas. These are all still too big of companies to give the examples for, but go to the retailers, go to like Lifestyle Sports, Elvery's, JD, and contact them and be like, I really want to do your social media ads. More than likely, these people are too big again. So you get what I'm saying. You have to keep working backwards and find someone that's in and of your niche and, relative to your market experience too. Like, you have very minimal market experience when you're starting a business, and that is arguably your strongest form of leverage to gain clients. If you've been working in the industry with multiple brands for 2 years versus someone who's worked with no brands and has started their business 2 days ago, it's going to be a lot easier for the person with 2 years to get a job. So what you have to do is start small, get a small paycheck, and just prioritize making like 600 or 1,000 euro a month, and that is your target. Don't worry about anything else. Just look at trying to hit that figure in the interim. And if you soon hit that figure, then you realize you're onto something. If it takes you quite a long time to hit that figure, then maybe you're either not working hard enough or you're not putting your attention in the right places. I can't help you with that side of it. That's all on your own. And again, as I said, you can only consume so much content, but the biggest side of making a business or doing anything is actually just doing it. And there is never a right time to do it. Again, we talked about this in the last episode. I put off making this podcast for the longest time, but there is no right time to do it. You have to just start it and do it. So to finish on a bright note, I think having a business, if you're a person, is absolutely fantastic. Not everyone is designed for a business, and that's also okay. You don't have to feel like you need to be in a business setting. If some of your friends want to make a business and they want to start doing the entrepreneurship stuff, don't feel like you have to if it's not something you have an interest in. And I think that's where we see a lot of people feeling like they're failing because they're not starting a business, but maybe it's just not aligned with them at all, and that's fine. Don't put yourself into a situation where you don't feel like it suits you, I'm speaking specifically in this video to people that are feeling like they're falling behind or just worrying that they're not doing the right thing, because I am that person still, Like, again, as I said at the start, I have some form of relative success. It feels like success so far to me. It's definitely not the end goal, but it's something. And I still worry every day as if I'm doing the right thing or if I need to do more or this. And the reality is you can always do more, but if you focus on doing the thing you're doing right now to the best of your ability, you might need to do as much more as you think. So pick one thing, niche down, and do it. Consider, are you over-consuming? If you are over-consuming, try limiting your phone. Try limiting your screen time. I use an app called 1 Sec, which will actually stop me for it's so annoying, man. It's like a 6-second pause before you open an app, and I've got it on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. So maybe consider using an app like that. It massively stops me. It massively helps me not go onto social media. And again, maybe you don't have a problem with socials. Maybe you love spending your evenings on TikTok. If you do, I would suggest you don't do that as much and read a book or talk to people more. And maybe that's mean of me, but I just don't think it's ever going to help you. And I don't think it's the best expense of your time. But I also do things that people probably don't think are the best expense of your time. Sometimes I smoke some weed. Sometimes I have a drink with my friends. And some people are probably like, that's a waste of your time. For me, it isn't. And that's fine. Again, everything's relative to you. And you have to understand that. Everything inside this video is relative to arguably me the most, because I'm the one who thought of it. And I'm the one who talked. So you might have listened to this episode and thought it was an absolute waste of your time, and that's fine if you did. I'm sorry for wasting your time. I'm not really sorry at all, because I don't think you did waste your time, because I think I'm a genius. That's a joke. Okay, people, I'm not going to waffle on for too much longer. I'm going to just summarize what we discussed. It's okay to not have a business. Everybody wants a business, and some people just aren't cut out for it. If you are cut out for it, great. The only way to make a business is by solving a problem. Create a solution to a problem. That's the foundation of every single business. Creativity isn't always painting and creating music or videos or photos. It's creating something. It's making an idea in your head real. Being creative now is so accessible, but it's also massively overconsumed. There's so many tools, there's so many sources of inspiration. So again, let's just look at trying to narrow down what we consume and what we look at and think of one way to do something and just do it that way. Just commit to doing it that way. If you're an editor and you're thinking, God, I'm missing out by not doing it in DaVinci Resolve, or I'm missing out by not using Adobe Premiere and I want to use both, you're probably just slowing yourself down. Just use one and use that only. Like I used to use Final Cut and DaVinci Resolve, and then I was just like, I'm just going to get better at using DaVinci Resolve so I don't have two apps open. And hey, I'm faster now. So what do you know? Pick a way. That is the best way. It's not the best way. Pick a way, and it is the best way. I'm going back on myself. Fuck it. Pick a way. Do it that way. Creativity sticks. Replication dies. Figure out how you can create a unique experience or a unique product or a unique solution. It's fine to draw inspiration from other people, but repackage it in a way that's truly unique to yourself. How to be more creative. Source. We consume so much stuff, we see so much stuff on a day-to-day basis, but our filter will sort through what is relevant to us. To be more creative, sit down with your pen and paper, write out your ideas, write out your emotions, write out your thoughts, and sit with them. The ones that are the most important will stick to you. You'll feel that feeling in your heart or in your gut. That's a sign that there's something in that. So again, iterate, write about that thing in specific the next time. And keep doing this and you'll eventually come to a refined idea. And the final way to be more creative is to just do the fucking thing. I'm out.